Hello and welcome to the podcast Love Yourself and Live Your Life. My name is Jolante Kolleg and I hope you're feeling wonderful. I hope you started this new year in a very positive energy, and I'd like to wish you all the very, very, very best for the new year. May all your dreams and all your wishes come true. And I have a new vision for this year as well. And one of the plans I have for this year is to have some wonderful guests in my podcast who will be sharing their life stories. And so we are here today, today I have a wonderful lady, Deborah Robinson. She came to this podcast to share her story. Deborah is speaking and sharing how a few years ago she has followed her heart despite experiencing fear and uncertainty. And even though everyone else advised her against her decision, she still followed her heart and is now living a life that she always wanted to live. She shares her story with us about her travels and the plans and dreams. And despite that life gave her so many different challenges on the way, Deborah and her partner, they always had a plan B or a plan C, and they never gave up. They always had their vision, they always had their dreams in front of them. So now their journey led them to a completely different place they would have never imagined, but found such a wonderful location they love, and they probably will stay there forever. So it's such an inspiring talk, and I'm so grateful to Deborah. She's such an amazing person, and I hope you can feel the positivity. I hope you can feel the energy that comes from Deborah. I really, really hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I did. And if you would like to get in touch with Deborah, I will link her Instagram account and also her YouTube channel, so that if you wish, you can get in touch with her, you can follow her, and you can subscribe to her channel. So enjoy this week's episode. Hello everyone, this is Jolante and welcome to the podcast Love Yourself and Live Your Life. And today I'm so excited to have a special guest on that podcast. It is Deborah Robinson, and I had a chat to Deborah a few days ago. She has inspired me so much with her story, with all that she has experienced, with telling me what she's doing at the moment and how she gets to this current lifestyle that she is living now. For me, it is an absolute dream, and it's something that I would really love to do myself. So I have asked Deborah, and she kindly accepted to have an interview. And with this interview, I'd like to inspire all my listeners. And I hope that all of you, by listening to Deborah's story as well, that you will follow your dreams, that you make your life happen for what you want, because very often I realize we just stop ourselves. And so welcome, Deborah. I'm so grateful for having you in this podcast. So as I mentioned,
I'm honored that you asked me. It's like, oh
yes, I have watched Deborah's podcast, YouTube channel, and Deborah has been traveling quite a lot. So I'd like to know, Deborah, what happened in your life that you decided to travel? What happened? Was there a reason? And how did you get to that life that you are living right now?
I think the real trigger was the end of my first marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I had tried, as far as I was concerned, I tried really hard to make that relationship work, and in the end I reached a point where the choice for me was very clear. It was either I stay in an emotionally abusive relationship or I live the rest of my life on my own. And I was in that place where, okay, I got to a place where I was not afraid to choose the life on my own, if that was what the choice was. Yeah. And around that time that I was going through a divorce, I I decided, I bought a plane ticket to New Zealand because I wanted to go on an adventure. And that was all I had, was a plane ticket to New Zealand. I scared myself silly at that particular time because I didn't have anywhere to stay. But the pieces of that journey fell into place. And I spent 4 weeks in my school summer holidays, because at the time I was a school teacher, and I absolutely loved it. I met people who were encouraging, who were interesting, who lived a completely different life than I did, who helped me. I stayed in one homestay. So in New Zealand, you can stay in people's homes, and you can eat a meal with them, which is a really nice thing to do when I was on my own. That was really great. And I met this amazing couple on Lake Pukaki who were hilarious. I mean, they were so completely different than me, but we just got on really well and swapped stories. And they said, where are you going next? And they sort of rang up a friend. So I think the name was Raylene. They said, oh, you want to go to Wanaka? We know Raylene in Wanaka. And they rang up, we're sending you an English girl. And they sort of passed me on. And I loved that. I loved that sense of, oh yeah, we can help. Yeah. I came back to the UK, and I continued. That was the start of me. I wanted to explore other places, and I didn't always want to travel on my own. I went off and I did some walking holidays and joined groups and met some friends that I still keep in touch with. And for that period of time, I was on my own. I lived, I think I had about 6 years where I lived totally on my own. And I reached a point where I was totally content. But then, oops, this is balancing on my knee. I do apologize. And then I reached a point in my career where it was, I loved my job, but I'd got to a point where it was, where do you go next? And I didn't really want to become a head or a deputy. I wanted to stay teaching or a creative, being creative. And I just stood one day and I thought, I don't know if I can do this for another 20 years. Yeah. So I took the decision, right or wrongly, to step away from my career. And as a result of doing that, which was very scary at the time, and several people said, what are you doing, giving up your job? But because of that, I ended up on a photography business course, because I love photography, and that's one of my passions. And I decided that I would go and find out how to run a photography business. Yeah. So I went on this course in the Lake District in the UK, and sat down next to somebody who we started chatting. And he was very nice and friendly, and we got on really well. And he asked me if I would like to second shoot a wedding with him. He had a PA. He was working in industry at the time. He had a PA who was getting married. Would I be the female? Would I go with him as a female? Because he didn't really want to do the getting dressed bridal boutique shots. So I was like, yeah, okay. And it took, I didn't hear from him for 3 months, and I thought, whatever. And then suddenly, out of the blue, this phone call came, and it was, yes, the wedding is going to happen. Yes, they'd love you to do the shoot. So I ended up traveling I lived in the Northwest and was brought up in the Northwest of England. And I ended up traveling to meet him and go and shoot this wedding. And we started a conversation that weekend. It was great doing the work, but doing the photography, we started a conversation, and it was one where at the end of the weekend, he dropped me back where I was staying and sort of went, well, thank you very much for your help, and went off. And I sort of looked and I went, something else was going on in that conversation. And then sort of gradually, he couldn't believe at the time, he was very respectful, he couldn't believe that I was on my own. He thought there must be somebody else in my life, and he didn't want to overstep that boundary. And in the end, he eventually, we swapped emails quite a few times every day. My friends were like, he's interested, he's emailing you every day. And then I said, well, we can talk on the phone. So we did that, and then eventually he asked me if he could take me out for dinner, and that was it really. We've been together ever since, and his passion is photography, and he's always wanted to travel. So that was how our journey started. Oh, wonderful. And we've visited a few places together, and then we went to New Zealand, which is the first video that I've put on our YouTube channel. Yes. So we called ourselves 2 Days Journey, because he's Christopher Day. So it was like, right, okay, 2 days journey and 2 days journey. Yes. So we went to New Zealand quite a while ago now, 2013, I think. And I have a real passion for the whole Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, adventure, small people make a difference. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. And I've experienced that. There's little things that you can do for somebody else that has a significant impact on them. And you might never know what that impact is. And I always felt like that with being a teacher, and specifically the age group that I was working with. Yeah. I'm like, I'm building foundations. I will never see the impact. I just won't. You get little bits of feedback, but you know, I'm laying ideas and I'm planting seeds, and hopefully one day some of those little seeds will grow and it'll be, it'll fruit into something amazing, but I will never see that. And I understood that was my job. And it felt, and so I loved the whole Lord of the Rings thing, for that small people, something small can make a big difference. So we went to New Zealand and we experienced that land, and it was, we have to travel. So we started to plan travel by land. We were going to go and buy a van and travel around. And then one thing led to another, and Chris, Chris took a job in Vienna in Austria. And the plan initially was that we would go and live together in Vienna. And then he was concerned the job didn't quite work out the way that he hoped. And so I stayed in the UK, and he started to look for, we started to save money for the journey, and he started to look for a job back in the UK. And in the meantime, we went to Croatia and had, to a specific place, but we unfortunately had a serious car accident. We actually hit a coach head on. He broke his back, which took a good 12 months for him to recover. In that instance, the people that we met in Croatia when we were in a really bad position, it was that thing again of just strangers who came along and helped you when you needed it. And people that you never saw again. They offered you help. People at the crash site were holding up blankets to keep the sun out of my eyes, because while I was bashed and bruised because the seatbelt had done its job, and I broke my toe, but I'd pulled quite a lot of muscles and I had a lot of seatbelt damage, so I couldn't move very easily. Chris broke his back, I think I said that, but we didn't know at the time because he was up adrenaline doing whatever he needed to do. We had people in the hospital who helped us cancel bookings, who got us water, a nurse who helped us be in the same room so we could communicate, because that would have been difficult. His company in Vienna came to his rescue, because they then informed us in the hospital in Croatia that he had a serious back injury. His company were then like, you're not staying in Croatia, and they airlifted him back to Vienna. And he had a major operation. He had a metal frame in his back for 8 months. And that was all like, oh my goodness, you know, those things that really helped. Otherwise it could have been a lot worse. But people who helped that then disappeared, and we never saw them again, but they were there when we needed them, which always gives me hope. So he recovered.
There are wonderful people out there without expecting anything, you know, and it's so beautiful to see. And that's why I always say it's so important to help and to give, because one day we might be in the same situation where we need help, and then we will hope that someone will be there. And that's what it is. That's what life is about, to help and to give each other.
And I think with the way certain, you know, the way the world is, it seems, and social media kind of, I think, adds to that negativity of people being quite unpleasant with each other, and you have an atmosphere of lies and distrust, and I think that makes me really incredibly sad, because it removes from the fact that ultimately I think there are people who are kind and helpful,
exactly.
but that's not newsworthy, and it's just so sad.
It is.
So
yeah. So I really appreciate you mentioning that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, people. If you treat people, if you go with an open heart to people, I think even the most grumpy person, you know, they have a reason. Exactly. They have a reason why, you know, why, and it's like, look beyond that. You know, there's like their face that they present, and yes, you have to be careful. There are people that you shouldn't trust, or you need to have your, you know, like your sixth sense or whatever. But generally, it's like somebody presents you with an image, but then it's like, look, what's behind that? Why? Why are they like that? And what? And I'm going slightly off the track. We've done it with we're currently in Portugal. Our journey has led us to Portugal. We were so we overcame our car accident. Chris couldn't find a job in the UK, so for several years we lived in two separate countries. And then what happened then? He then came up with the idea that the journey might be traveling by boat. What did I think about sailing? Well, in terms of my experience of boats and whatever, I'd been on ferry crossings, and that was my experience. Now, deep in my past, my granddad apparently had a boat and tried to set up a business in Preston. I think fishing for cockles or something in the River Ribble, and my step grandfather, I think, was a pilot or worked on the pilot boat in the River Ribble. So there is a boating connection somewhere in the past, but mine was mainly ferries. Okay. So we went off and we did some sail training. We hired a yacht and had to go to see if we liked that. And then we sort of said, well, let's think about buying a boat and try.
Amazing.
And in that period of time, Chris's health began to be a challenge and a problem. And we didn't really know why. And they started to die. Now, we talked, Jolana and I talked earlier in the week, and I couldn't remember what they'd initially said Chris had. Is it sarcoidosis?
Right, okay.
So they initially thought that he had that. They'd found something in his lungs that they weren't sure about.
Okay.
So he was having tests, and he was having some chest pains, and they were like, oh, it's these things pressing and whatever. So we were a bit not sure what was happening, but he was really struggling physically and exhaustion. And so he was home in the UK. We went to Wales to look at a boat. And while he was in Wales, he suffered a heart attack.
Oh, gosh.
Completely out of the blue, totally unexpected. We didn't understand why. And we thought at that point, so that was 3 years ago, we thought at that point the travel and the journey and was going to be over, because we didn't know what the consequences of that would be. Anyway, he made a recovery. He still has, he informed me several months later that, well, his heart was permanently damaged. So the muscle did die. So I'm thinking, oh, what does that mean then? But we've done enough reading to know that diet played a major role in why he had his heart attack, because we couldn't understand. You know, he doesn't really drink. He doesn't drink excessively, never smoked, is not overweight, all of those things. And we've realized that actually he was a sugar addict, and sugar, and in very, very simple terms, sugar is the baddie. You know, sugar, complex carbs, cause inflammation, and his body was majorly inflamed, and that's where the heart, his heart was trying to repair itself, his body was trying to repair itself, and it couldn't. And the warning signs were there, and the medical evidence was there, it just was misinterpreted. So that was an interesting journey. So we've completely changed our diet, and he is a lot better for that.
Wonderful.
So we carried on with our journey. We bought a boat. We got the boat ready. The boat is in Denmark. There's a really nice connection to Chris's home, because the boat was built in his hometown and was probably moored in Gosport Harbour while he was there.
Oh, wow.
So that's nice. The gentleman that we bought the boat from is Danish. That's why the boat was in Denmark.
Okay.
Lovely, lovely gentleman that we still keep in touch with, and that he's helped us. We love Denmark. It's a really peaceful, calm place, and you've got a link between the woodland. They have coastal woodlands and the sea, so you've got a really strong nature connection. So Denmark is my hero. I love Denmark because of that's where forest schools originated, and while I was teaching, I was a forest school teacher, so I'm passionate about connection to nature and being outside and how that's good for your mental and well-being and physical health. So we've had the boat in Denmark now for 3 years. Last summer we realized that there was major problems with the boat, in that the electrics really needed some work doing. So that kind of last summer sailing season, we had 8 weeks. And we had one challenge after another. The van broke down on the way there. The boat, I think the various mechanical things went wrong with the boat. We realized that the batteries were shot, so we couldn't do what we wanted to do, and it was all this work that needed to be sorted. We're like, right, okay, let's get on with it. So Chris finally decided that was it. He was going to retire. So come February of this year, he retired.
2020, so last year.
Yeah. Oh yes, of course.
I know.
It feels like last year.
I know.
It's like a bizarre time. Yes. So he made that final decision. Our plan was I would go to Portugal and do a sail training course to develop my skills. We would work on the boat in April and get all of the jobs without any interruption, because we'd only been able to go and spend weekends or a week or the summer, when we realized that there were things that, in order to make it safe, we needed to really do. So we would spend April, we would pack up the flat in Vienna that Chris was living in, and I would go visit. And that would all be finished. So the life in Vienna was going to be over, and that connection would finish. And then we would spend the summer in Denmark. And then we would think, okay, we also had the challenge of Brexit, but let's not go there with that. As UK citizens in Europe, we're now limited to, we're living in the mountains in Portugal, and they have delivery vans that come and are like a mobile shop, and they announce their arrival with like,
that's interesting.
So people know. It's really quite funny. So we would be limited to 90 days. So it was, okay, how do we manage this, having the boat? We weren't ready to go off and sail any great long distance. We needed to up our skills, and so that was the plan. And then COVID happened. So when the first wave really hit and everyone was locking down, I was on a sail training yacht in Portugal, and foreign registered boats were not allowed to moor in any marina in Portugal. So I was stuck in the Tejo River in Lisbon for I was stuck on the boat for 10 days. We were anchored in that river for 7. The British Embassy were incredible in Lisbon, who managed to negotiate and found a way for me to be allowed to leave. Chris was in the UK on business. Austria shut down, and then trying to get back was incredibly expensive. And because of me being in one place and him being in another, he found somewhere safe in the UK, in Wales, to go and hide out. Because obviously with his heart, we thought there might be a slight risk or a risk. So he kept himself isolated and out of the way. I managed to get back to the UK because that was the only place at the time that I could go to. I couldn't get to him. So I ended up spending 3 months with my mum, which at the moment that I arrived was probably mid-March, end of March I arrived, was probably the most down that I was. I didn't know what was happening. It was my mum was terrified of me being there. She didn't know what to do. I stayed in the dining room in the downstairs room for a week, and she she was struggling with knowing what to do, and I was like, I can't leave this room because I don't want to put her in danger. So I think the first week was the worst one, and I didn't know how long I was not going to be able to see Chris. We didn't know if we would be able to, when we would get to our boat. We didn't know when we would get to Vienna to get all our things. So I arrived in the UK. I had some things at my mum's anyway, but I arrived in the UK with 2 small bags. That was it. So I survived with 2 small bags of bits and pieces for 3 months. But afterwards, it was right. Okay, try things, do things, occupy yourself. And fortunately, in the UK, the weather was amazing. So my exercise was once I was out of the my isolation, and I realized afterwards, I don't think that I needed to isolate at that time. There was that, but I was. I would go out and go and revisit the places that I had spent time as a child, and also when I had lived there full time, because I moved away 10 years ago. But I went back to places that I knew, and it was really nice to, I'd forgotten this place, and and I had robins that sang to me, and Chris and I talked to each other every day. And where he was in Wales, the signal was pretty poor, so he used to have to kind of go and hunt for a signal. We couldn't do FaceTime, but we just talked every day. And despite it, I always felt, I felt like I got closer to him.
Yes.
It didn't feel like he wasn't there. I felt like he was close. And that was a surprise and a nice one. And we would talk and we would plan, and we would do things. I think one day I did get a FaceTime call from him, because he rang me up and he said, "Where are you?" And I said, he said, "Go and turn FaceTime on," or whatever. And he climbed an oak tree, because that was where there was a good signal. So he FaceTimed me from up an oak tree. So that was pretty good. And then eventually, and that time with my mum, prior to that, it meant that I really reconnected with my sister in a way. That journey back with my sister, we've always been okay, but there's always been an interesting dynamic in my family. And I think staying with my mum helped me understand that thing about my sister presented a face, and she was always quite aggressive, and but it was what's going on behind that. And gradually, prior to the lockdown and also during it, I suddenly began to see another story as far as my sister was concerned. And having stayed with my mum, I began to understand where my sister was coming from. And I realized that actually I'd been blind to the stuff that was going on for her in that family dynamics. And it was one of those where I think at one point I did actually apologize. I said, like, I'm really sorry, because I feel like I haven't understood and I haven't seen this. And now we chat really regularly and share our experiences of the family dynamic, and realize that actually we were on the same page. And for her, she was being told one thing about me and led to believe things about me that made her feel inferior and insecure. And I was being told things that weren't necessarily accurate or true, and not understanding where she was coming from, because she had this view of me that I was perfect and could do no wrong, and I was unaware of that. So it was suddenly like we started a conversation to kind of clear that up, and that's been so valuable.
I was going to say it's so important, and that proves again how important communication is, because most of us, we just see our own story, we have got our own vision, and we have our own thoughts and our own problems, and we don't understand the other person. And we can only start understanding by showing our own weaknesses, our vulnerability, and therefore the other person can open as well. And once we understand, we see a completely different picture. So communication, I experience it so often, and more than ever in the last few years, it's so important. That's why we have a voice. That's why we are meant to speak to people, to speak about something is, what we think, what bothers us, not in a bad way, but really, truly, like you said, through communication and understanding.
I think a really good definition I had was to take the word not communication but dialogue, because in dialogue, a dialogue is where you talk to that other person and you're listening to what they're saying. So it's two-way, because you have to hear. And I think the danger is in society, and particularly with social media, everyone's communicating, but nobody's listening to anyone. It's like I'm having my conversation here in this place, and somebody else is having a conversation, but the two are not actually, you know, it's like I'm banging my drum, da, 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 you're not, and the other person's banging, but you're not actually listening to what's going on. So it has to be a dialogue. It has to be, I listen to what you're really saying, you know, the anger. And so for me, with my sister this year, and later on in the year with my brother as well, there was there's a process of healing going on with my brother, and with the family dynamic that has been utterly amazing. So I ended the year kind of really incredibly grateful for it. So for Chris and I, even though we were apart, we felt together. We did manage to get to Denmark. We got the work done that we needed to do on the boat. We didn't get to sail this year. We left Vienna entirely, and that was a little bit rushed, which was a little sad, but we've got friends there. And then it was really, okay, what do we do now? We where do we go, and where do we base ourselves? Because we still want to, at the time, we still want to travel. We still, and I think we're beginning to change that definition, and our website and our YouTube channel are 2 days. It's about the journey. It's like this year, the journey with my family, the journey of being a human, but also the journey with cultures and with people. So it was, what do we do? Where do we go? We didn't particularly want to come back to the UK. We thought while the opportunity was there, we wanted to try and see Europe. So we thought that the plan was we'll go to Portugal and we'll see whether life works out there, you know, see whether it's a possibility. And if not, we'll come back to the UK. Chris has always had a passion for Scotland. So his heart is mountains and the wild, and it's like, well, that's the other option. And we kind of tried Scotland, but it was almost like the door was closed. The door didn't open. Our YouTube channel now is kind of like all the videos, all the stories from last year. So it's a year out, but we didn't know what was happening, whatever. So we've documented what happened last year. So eventually, time on the boat, and then the journey through Europe, where we went to some really beautiful places. And then we came here, and it was, right, okay, can we find somewhere? And independently, we both chose the place we're currently staying in. And it was, we had my experience of Portugal in March was they locked me out. The gentleman from the British Embassy, who was so kind and so reassuring and helpful, was like, don't judge the Portuguese on this, that, you know, this is an exceptional circumstances. They are warm and kind and friendly, and they will help you. And I was like, okay. So we came back, and we just really felt like we found an open door. And I think I enjoyed it. I was settled here. I think it has really surprised Chris in a way that he never imagined. So we're currently staying for the next couple of months in the Carmulo Mountains. Right. So that's central Portugal. So I'm sat on the floor. This is the bed. And I'm looking out the window, and across the valley over there is the Sierra de Estrela Mountains that are covered in snow. Wow. We're up this mountain, so we're at, I think, about 1,000 meters up. Wow. And we have, we can just go out. We've barely left the mountain. We go off to do the shops, but we're not really sure what the restrictions are. And today, Portugal is now on a full lockdown for 4 weeks. So like it was in March. We were like, well, I don't think it's going to be any different than we've been living anyway. We've just walked out the door and gone up the mountain and explored. We've been fascinated and just surprised by nature here.
Yes.
By that connection to the natural world. So we've got mountains where when it rains, the streams flow. So it's almost like the mountain sings, the streams sing, and they have a voice. And sometimes it's quiet. And then I guess in the summer when there's no rain, they will be silent. But in the winter, they're like a crescendo, you know, they're like a male voice choir or whatever, and they're stunning. So Chris has been climbing waterfalls and trying to find where the waterfalls start and where they go to. And
oh, wow.
So we've done that a few times. He's had some amazing experiences with nature here. We've had owls that are around, and then just recently in the new year, before Christmas, we had seen this little stray that was wandering around and looked bedraggled, and we like, you know, is he okay or whatever? And he wouldn't come near. He was really timid. Yeah. And then we heard from the villagers here are gorgeous, and we heard from a neighbour that they think, oh yeah, the dog's been abandoned. It's quite common. Oh. So he's a small wire-haired Jack Russell, we think, and they said it. You know, he's a hunting dog, so hunting birds or picking up things, and he's either been left behind or they've just abandoned him, and he's wandering around. And the talk was that he must have been around because we've seen him for at least a month beforehand, and getting more and more bedraggled. And what we were led to believe was that he was causing a bit of a problem in the village, I think, because he wants to go make friends with the dogs, and we were told that somebody might solve the problem by killing him or getting rid of him, and we were like, we can't do that. That can't happen.
No.
So before with rain, it was a really miserable cold day. The night before Chris had gone out, he said, I'm going to go out and see where he is. I've got to go and try and find him. Yes. So he went out looking. I think he gave him some food, but couldn't. And then on the New Year's Eve, it was really miserable. And he's like, I need to go and find this dog. I need to go and find where he is. So he went off, rang me. I found him. He's up on the path, bring some food. So I went scooting up, and this thing was like, wouldn't come near, was all crawling on I gave him some food and he managed to come, and then it was like, let's go back and get some more. So I ran back and got some more food, and I managed to get him to come and take it from my hand, or really close, but he was cowering on the floor. And he followed us back to the house and hung around, and then he disappeared. He went, and we didn't know where he'd gone to, and it was like, okay, we hope he's all right. And then, so that was New Year's Day. Was it New Year's Day? Don't know what happened New Year's Day, whether we found him or not. But then he was around. He came back for food. So he turned up at the house and we gave him some food, and then he went off again. And then on the 2nd of January, he appeared, and he didn't leave. He hung around. And Chris went off tried to go off on his bike, and he wanted to follow Chris on his bike. And there's a lady, one of the village ladies is so lovely. She's like a real salt of the earth kind of, she knows everything in the village. Really wanted him, had a real heart for him, and was concerned. And there's a few in the village that are like, you know, really happy that this little dog is a lot happier. And Chris was off and he was following him on the bike, and Chris was worried because he gets really close. She's like, oh, amor. So yeah, he stuck around for the day, and he hung around, and then we thought, you know, we encouraged him to come in, and he stayed, and he hasn't left.
So you have got a new pet at home now.
So we have a new member of the family who follows Chris round, like won't go out with me, but follows Chris around, and he has now found his voice, will bark. And yeah, he's an interesting little character. So that's another journey in itself, because it's kind of like, what do we do with a dog? How do we make sure that we can, you know, we can stay and keep and look after him? We don't have to do anything. So that's interesting. But it just felt like this land has given us something. This land needs us to do something, and it's like, this is what we need to do. And then the latest is that we have started to look for somewhere to live, more like somewhere of our own. So we think that we're in this process at the very start of this year, that our journey is evolving into something that we never expected or planned or thought about. So and again, it's that connection with the people in the village. We'd gone to look at a house on Tuesday, and we thought it might be, yes, this might be it. We could move in, it would be really simple. But we came to realize that actually it had no outside space whatsoever. So you can't go and sit outside, and we were really crestfallen, and it was kind of, right, okay, well, this is not happening. But as we were looking around this house, now I want to say, I can't say the lady's name. I've called her the wrong name, which has lodged in my head, which is really bad. It's one of my bad traits. But she's a really lovely lady. She loves the dog. She's really glad that he's happy with us. She was around while we were looking around this house and was explaining, because she knows everything. She was explaining the garage and the land and everything, and we were like, okay. And then she came the other day, and she was like, our neighbours are Brazilian and they speak good English, so we were kind of communicating via them as translators. And I'm beginning to learn Portuguese, but oh my, it's so hard. She basically was saying, she was having a think. She said, that house is no good for you because it has she's watched Chris sit outside in the sunshine. You need the sunshine, she's saying. And she was like, there is a house that she knows somebody wants to sell. Would we be interested? It's here, it's all in one level. Would we think? And we were like, yeah, we'll have a look, we'll consider it. So yesterday we went to look at this other house. So it's like, okay, it needs a lot of work. But it's maybe a possibility. So at the moment we're kind of waiting to see. We're like, I think I'm probably building my hopes up far too much, because we don't know how much it's going to cost, and it's the price, and whether we can negotiate with the owner, and the price is the next one. So it's like, okay, rein back those hopes, just let's just wait and see. Yeah. But then that will mean the journey evolves completely differently, and I think we've begun to realize the journey is about connection to land, and land as in the natural world and nature, and how important that is to our survival. And we have to work in partnership with it, not as an overmaster. I can do whatever I want with you. It's like, because if the pandemic is going to teach us anything, perhaps we were the maker of our own doom, because we didn't respect and take care of nature. We've abused it, and we've pushed it into small corners, so it can't go anywhere else. And you suddenly release things that shouldn't be released. And if you treated nature with more care and more passion, and then those things wouldn't necessarily happen. So yeah, it's going to be, this year I think is already going to have challenges. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's at the moment. So we are making a life. We have taken our journey to central Portugal.
And it's a journey that was not planned. And I just found this so valuable, what you said, that your journey led to where you are now through so many ups and downs, and plan B and plan C. And by simply you accepting it and seeing it as a part, and not fighting against it, and not getting angry and saying, okay.
Oh, I've done my fair share of fighting. I have to. There's been many times where it's like, oh, why is it not working out? Chris is that I'm not. I've had to learn, and it's been, okay, calm down. And particularly last year with the situation of being, I'm going to say, stuck at my mum's, and it was like, no, you're just going to have to accept this is where it is at the minute and live with it. But yeah, it's not, you're right, but I am no saint. I have not found it easy at times.
Because your plan was originally completely different, and where you are now, it's all that came up, and now you are planning of staying there right now, and who knows where your journey is going to lead to. You don't know what will happen in 6 months, but you know, it's so exciting to see. And when you said at the beginning, and you said when you gave up the life, your job, and you said, I will go to New Zealand, and there was fear that came up, and people were advising you, don't do this. Carry on, stick to the job, stick to this comfortable life that you had. And you decided to take the step anyway. I just found this so valuable, because most of us, we have, of course, the fear, what will happen with the uncertainty, what we have now, what we have today. It may not be perfect, but it is what it is. So we are scared of trying something else. We are scared of leaving our current life behind, because it may come, we may struggle, but we don't focus on all the beauty that may be ahead of us. We focus on everything that could go wrong and not what can go right. And you have taken the risk, yes, and you embraced the fear. And
there's been plenty of fears, and I think that for me has been the lesson that I've been continuously learning over the last 10 years. And Chris is really good at reminding me that, you know, for me, it's, I failed. Oh, it's not worked out. It's a failure. And he said, no, you're learning. You have to make mistakes. You have to fail, whatever failure is.
Absolutely.
And it's not, he said to me loads of times, it's not a failure. It's only a failure when you give up.
Exactly.
You know, because that step, like going to, really simple, going to see that house on Tuesday, and we were like, oh, but I think she's called Ferdinanda. She's lovely. I love her. She was there. She was listening and has gone away. And so if we hadn't gone to see that house and gone, it's not what we wanted, it's a real disappointment, she wouldn't then have been around to go, oh, you know, there. So, and I still struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, but it's not a success. And Chris is like, Debs, you're learning. You know, you've got to make mistakes, but if you learn from those, or you learn from the experience where it hasn't quite worked out or something went wrong, you move on and you keep going. And
Exactly. It's all a learn. Yeah, I always used to think as well, I failed, or, you know, I did a mistake, and I would judge myself and criticize myself for all the things I did wrong. But only afterwards, I think, okay, if I would not have experienced this, if I would not have failed, I wouldn't have learned, and I wouldn't be here where I am today, with all the learnings, with all the knowledge that I gained from these situations, especially through these challenges. Yes.
I think Chris is really funny, because when I start on that, he goes, and he'll get, now we have a fire in the kitchen, so we need wood blocks to heat. So he'll pick up one and he'll go, here you go, do you want to hit your head on it? You know, it's like, go on, beat yourself up even more kind of thing, you know, just said, look, and he's constantly reminded me of that.
That's so wonderful to have someone exactly to have a partner where you can, both of you, learn from each other. That's so amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah, he's definitely, and I think going right back to where we started the conversation about when I went to New Zealand, and it was to my marriage had ended, and I made that decision because it was either I'd got to a place where this relationship is not healthy for me, and it took me a long time to get there, but it was either I stay in this or I live on my own, and I got to a place where I knew that I could do that. But at that time it was kind of, I want somebody who if I ever have a relationship again, I want somebody who I can go on a journey with, so a life journey, and somebody who, it's a partnership, it's like, it's a joint thing, it's not, and somebody who'll let me get angry and they be okay with it. And then I waited around. Well, I wasn't waiting around, but when I least expected it, he turned up, and it has been, and that journey has not, it's been hard unlearning experiences of poor relationships to learn what a good one is. It's not always been easy, because you're having to learn to trust somebody in a way that you probably haven't done that before, because the models that I certainly was given were not always positive. So yeah, it's had its ups and downs, but yeah, it's been an interesting and will continue to be an interesting journey.
Of course, yes, it's so inspiring, honestly, your journey and the life you have created for yourself, and that it works out for you and Chris. It's just so wonderful to see, not knowing what comes next, but having the trust, the faith that whatever comes next, it is the journey. There will be learnings, and there will be a plan B or plan C to come for you both.
Yeah.
Over and over again. It's not going to be a straight line and always everything easy. You will have to make decisions, but that's exactly what life is about. And so definitely. I just hope that the listeners, they can really gain so much from your experience, from sharing your story, what you have experienced, because it's so inspirational.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, you can, if anyone wants to follow us, and we're on YouTube.
Exactly.
And
I will link it into the podcast, so whoever is interested to get in touch with you, to link your Instagram account as well, YouTube account. So whoever wants to follow Deborah and Chris, there will be, I'm sure, so many more wonderful videos to come. And
yeah, I hope so. That's what I'm going to do for the day. It's a beautiful day, and it's like, oh, I need to do another video. But we've got a website as well. I mean, if people go on the YouTube channel, there'll be a link to that. But I wrote some stories. I wrote the story of the car accident that we had.
Okay.
Because even in the midst of, I mean, amazing people helping us, but there was also some quite funny incidences. I think I put that in the story. It was very funny in this bizarre situation. And I also wrote a story about kind of my decision to, right, that's it. I'm done with men, you know, the done with men story. Yes. I wrote about that, and then literally not long after the finish, I ended up on this photo shoot with Chris, and we started chatting, and that, you know, so I wrote that one because it was an interesting story. So there's a couple of stories, and there's things that of places that we've been to that are written down, our experiences, and they kind of link with the.
We'll link your website as well.
Yeah,
into the podcast, so whoever would like to read into a little bit more. So that's so wonderful, Deborah. I'd like to thank you so much. It's so wonderful, you know, to have met you as well, to get inspired by your journey, and as well for me, for my future, because as I mentioned, our dream is as well to travel. And last year was the time for us that we were going to move to Spain, and then COVID came, and so in the meantime, we are still here in England, and I'm sure we will move at some time, but we are accepting what it is right now, and as soon as we have the chance to go, we will definitely go as well.
Yeah.
And,
well, then I hope that we're still here and we're neighbours. We'd be like neighbours.
Exactly. That would be very nice. Very, very nice.
We might have a nice house with a guest room that people can come and stay.
Yes.
Might be someone in the future. You never know, but I'm not. We'll just wait and see.
Exactly. We will see. Thank you so much again, Deborah. I wish you most of luck for the future. We will be in touch, definitely. Yes. I have got you on Instagram myself as well, so we will definitely stay in touch. Look after yourself. Good luck with the house as well. Keep me updated.
I will do. I will
have
do.
A wonderful
film
day.
That one. So, but yes, thank you so much for asking me to do this. It's such an honor, and
it's an honor for me.
No, it's really nice, because it's just another one of those, just sort of another confirmation about the journey you're on and the things that you're doing, and sometimes you just being asked to do something like this, it's just a major encouragement. It's really nice. So thank you for asking.
It is. No, absolutely. Thank you so much. So yes, take care of yourself. Big hug, and well, stay in touch, Deborah.
Okay.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. How do I turn it off? Oh,
I'll turn it off. So I think
I can leave.
I hope you have enjoyed this week's podcast, and I would love if you could leave me a comment, if you could leave me your thoughts about Deborah's journey. Feel free to contact Deborah as well if you would like to share your thoughts. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Instagram or on Facebook, Jolante Kolleg, or check out my website, jolantekolleg.com. There are loads of free things I'm offering. So feel free to contact me, and I hope to see you back next week again. Take care, loads of love, your Jolante.